Hey, it's Dave. So today I'm joined by Jason Debolt. He's been a previous guest on my channel where he described his journey of accumulating enough Tesla stock in order to retire early a couple years ago. And in this episode, I wanted to bring back Jason again to get an update on his early retirement journey, to get his current thoughts on Tesla stock, on Tesla AI Day, and anything else related to Tesla in his life. So welcome back on the show, Jason. How have you been?
I'm great. Thanks for having me again. I'm really looking forward to the talk.
Awesome. Yeah. It was a great, fun chat the last time we talked about your journey. You had some memorable stories in that journey that came out. I think a lot of people kind of resonated with some of the things that you were saying. Yeah, so you retired early. Was this about a year and a half ago or so, or how long ago was it?
Yeah, it was January of 2021. So about a year and 10 months ago. So almost 2 years. Yeah, it's
Okay,
been a long time.
got it.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I remember you had, I think at time of retirement, it was around, was it 10 million or so in Tesla stock?
Yeah, almost
Okay.
12 million. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And you've seen a ton of ups and downs during that
Yeah.
period. I mean, okay, first off, were you ready for that type of volatility the past year and a half?
That's no
Yeah,
problem. It's fine.
really?
It's really honestly as scary as it is today. It seems for a lot of people, it was way worse in 2018, and that was hell, right? For me at least. But that's mostly because of my margin situation. But yeah, it's extremely volatile. I think it'll continue to be volatile. And as long as you're not over leveraged and as long as you're in it for the long term, there's no reason to worry. I think Tesla's in a great position. They're they're just killing it with manufacturing and AI,
Yeah.
and we'll get into all this stuff, but it's really exciting. I think the closer you are to the engineering side of Tesla, the easier it is to hold.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So I think you tweeted recently that you're up, I think up to about 18 million or so, and now you're down 9 million. So you're like cut in half.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, would have a hard time dealing with that type of, volatility. Are there any mind kind of tricks or hacks or thought process you're doing to kind of, be okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not my money. I don't think of it as my money, and I don't think of it as having lost that money. I think of it as deployed capital. It's really, it's really capital that's at work. I think of it as machines, engineers, and I don't think it's my money. Nothing is really. I mean, today Tesla's more valuable than it's ever been, right? I think internalizing that, every day they're more valuable. They have thousands of people, incredibly talented people working at this company, and every day they're deploying software, they're manufacturing cars. I mean, every single day it's a more valuable company, and just because the stock price gets cut in half doesn't mean the company is worth half as much. That's not the way it works. So I think internalizing that, I think everybody knows that to some extent, but truly internalizing it and understanding what that really means, it just makes it so much easier to hold Tesla when it's volatile. Like I don't sweat at all. Like it doesn't bother me at all, really, the volatility. And because I'm living within my means, I'm not spending too much. I'm not over leveraged. So it's, I'm in it for the long term. So
yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. Like it's not my money. There's kind of this analogy I've thought of is when you invest, let's say, into a company like Tesla, there is this releasing where you're saying, these amount of assets or resources are no longer mine. I'm giving them over to the company in a sense, exchanging them for a part ownership of the company. And even though the so-called stock price or sentiment of people go up and down, you still own the same amount or same percent of the company. Like that hasn't changed.
Exactly.
Like the deal that you made to buy those shares and that percent is still the same,
Yeah,
it's just mentally you see the stock price go up and down and you're like, what's going on? It's changing so much, feels like.
Yeah. I mean, most people want it all. They want to be able to say, oh, I have $18 million, but they also want to say they own 45,000 shares, but that's not the way it works. Like you don't own $18 million. You just own those shares, and you own, I own 8 minutes of Tesla production. Basically, I just took the number of shares that I own and divided it by the total number of shares in circulation. And that's, if you look at the number of minutes in the year, that there are. I own 8 minutes of that. So that's another way I'd like to think of my ownership of Tesla, is how many minutes, or for some people seconds, of production do you own, right? So during that 8 minutes, there's thousands of robots, thousands of code deployments, engineers, meetings, people discussing things, and all that output, all that productive output, I own that. That's pretty exciting to me. That's how I think of valuation is I'm closer to the actual factory and the people involved, and it's not about the numbers and the financials for me. It's more about understanding what Tesla's doing and just understanding, how far ahead they are and all these things like manufacturing and AI. So.
Yeah, I was at the factory before it opened with my wife and 2 kids, the Austin Gigafactory. And as I was watching it getting built, it's almost finished. I'm like telling my wife, hey, we own, this amount of this factory, like the exact percent. And I could actually quantify, and actually I was like kind of showing how much kind of we own of this factory, and of every X amount of cars, like this is how many cars we own of production, right, from this factory, and the profits. And and it's not just this factory, but it's every other factory that they're going to, be able to build in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Tesla has 4 factories now, and they're going to eventually have 20 plus factories, and you'll still own X minutes of production, right? I'll still own 8 minutes of production. It's exciting. It's such a privilege to own this stock. Like it's such an incredible thing that this is available to the public to own, right? This Tesla almost went private. It almost went private, and that would have been heartbreaking, right? Like, so I mean, I still can't believe that Tesla is just a share that people can just buy stock in Tesla, and it's literally the most exciting kind of stock to own. I mean, it's an incredible productive asset, and I feel very fortunate just to own any shares at all, right? I mean, we almost went private in 2018. So.
Yeah, I think about that sometimes too. Imagine if Tesla did go private. Let's say retail shareholders couldn't continue on ownership, and then you have these like Tesla AI days and Optimus reveal, and like we have no ownership, no stock.
I know, it'd be so sad, right? And then you would hear rumors of how valuable Tesla is. It's worth $1 trillion private valuation. Like they're raising funds and they're worth $1 trillion. Like, and we would have missed out on that. That would have been like terrible. So it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm curious, how often are you looking at Tesla's stock price? I mean, is it something you look at every day, or just?
Yeah, I look at it every day, all throughout the day. It's just fun, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's down today. What happened, right? Did Elon tweet something, or is I don't know. It's just fun. I don't really, there was a time where I was posting all of my losses. Like some days I would lose like $1 million, like in one day, trading day, and I would be like logged into my checking account, logged into my brokerage account, like refreshing the page to get the largest possible loss so I could share it on Twitter and like shock everybody. Like that was like, so I was kind of like enjoying that a little bit, but eventually this is all going to work out. Tesla will come out on top, and I'm not worried.
Interesting. What do you think about the chatter about a possible Tesla stock buyback that some people are suggesting, recommending Tesla to do? I think actually Gary Black just wrote an open letter or something. You have Leo Kogwan and some others as proponents. Any thoughts on that for you?
Yeah, I saw that. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of people that want the buyback to happen, and I'm actually kind of indifferent. I don't think it's a really big deal long term, but I would prefer Tesla to hold on to a large cash position just in case they do have to shut down a factory or something happens, right? So I'm kind of a little bit more on the camp of like with you. Like I don't really think a buyback is necessary, but maybe next year or maybe in the coming years, definitely. But I think right now it's there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, especially with Ukraine. And I'm a little bit hesitant to say we should do a buyback, but we'll see how, we'll see what happens with Q3 earnings. And yeah, but I don't have a strong position, right?
Got it. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think Elon and management have saved 15 to 20 billion on purpose and shrunk down their debt because that's what they feel comfortable with. And for people to tell them, oh, take 10 billion more in debt right now, it's like they've worked really hard to get to this place where they do have 20 billion.
I agree. I mean, for so many years, we didn't have cash. Like we didn't have enough cash for many years. Now that we finally have cash, are we going to use it to buy back shares? Like, I'm like, let's enjoy the cash a little bit and like just, so yeah, I mean, and I don't really know how much the share price would change, even if they spent, billions of dollars on buybacks. Like it would just be a marginal change, right, in the stock price. But I could be wrong. There could be other psychological impacts of that. Maybe that is, and you mentioned some good points in one of your last videos about how much Apple is doing buybacks, like $20 billion a quarter, like $80 billion a year in buybacks for Apple, and their stock price is still down, right? So
true. It's interesting. I mean, on Twitter, you're kind of tweeting about the chances or probabilities of a possible nuclear war happening.
Right.
I think Emmett Peppers has been kind of tweeting about that too. What percent are you thinking? And I guess following that up, how does that impact Tesla at all, if there is, let's say? And there's also so many scenarios of what is a so-called nuclear war. Is it just one bomb? Is it, small nukes going off? Is it escalating? Or, I mean, what's your kind of thought process for thinking about that?
I mean, I don't know what the chances are, but I know that it's a higher chance than any time since, I think, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. I mean, and we had some cool heads back then, right? We don't have those cool heads today. I mean, I think there was a Russian submarine commander around that time that was told to launch a nuke, and he refused to, or something. Like there was some story about some Russian submarine commander that was like a hero because he basically rejected. He had a cool head about it, and I think that JFK and Khrushchev did a kind of a secret deal that we didn't learn about for another 30 years, where JFK removed Jupiter missiles from Turkey if Khrushchev would remove missiles from Cuba. So I think that there was some deal making going on. I don't see deal making happening right now at all. If you look at both sides, the chances of a deal being made, I think, are getting lower and lower every day, right? So I'm a little worried about it, I just don't see a path to de-escalation, which is the concerning thing, right? That's what I'm worried about. Is there's it's just I don't see anyone talking to each other, right? They're not talking, so that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what the role of COVID and all these remote meetings online, especially with governments and politics, where before you had all these government officials, everyone meeting each other, having to interface. And you had this long period where they're just like, oh, okay, we'll do a Zoom call if ever. And it just feels like, we're in a world where more than ever, we need that personal touch, this nuanced, relationships. And I feel like all of this stuff could have and should have been avoided. It's a tough one. All right. I'm wondering, when we last talked, your strategy with your early retirement was to live off of margin, but not to sell any Tesla shares. And I believe you haven't sold any Tesla shares from that time, right?
Right. I haven't. I haven't sold any shares. Yeah.
How has kind of that living off a margin been? Is it stressful at all to have your margin increase, but then let's say the size of your holdings go down by 50% from the top?
Actually, I'm at about 12% loan to value right now, meaning for every, say, $1 million in Tesla stock that I own, that's borrowable. So that's half of my shares I can actually borrow against using margin. About 12% of that, I have about 12% debt to that amount. So that's about yeah. So basically for every $1 million that I have in Tesla stock, I can borrow, I'm borrowing like 120,000. I can borrow, I think, up to 500,000, but I want to keep it down to, actually, I'm trying to keep it at 8%, but because the stock price has declined a bit, I'm actually at about 12%, that's something I can deal with. I mean, I have friends that have 30% loan to value, and, they seem to be doing okay. The rate that I can borrow through margin is much lower than the 10% that a lot of people get. Because I've negotiated that rate and have a direct relationship with my broker. So that's something that, contributes to me not worrying so much, is because my rate is much lower than I can, the rate that I get charged for borrowing. And also I'm only at, 12%, 8 to 12% range of my loan to value. So that's something that, if I was up above 20%, I would probably start to get a little bit like, maybe I'll just kind of, I won't go out as much, and I'll try to kind of like not spend as much. But my expenses aren't that much. My mortgage payment is like $4,500 a month. It's really not much at all. I don't have a huge amount of expenses.
Got it. Yeah. Is your margin rate, has it gone up a lot this year?
It's gone up a little bit. Because it's tied to the Fed funds rate. But it's the last time I checked, it was effectively about 3.5% as of kind of September. So it's pretty good, even with all the rate increases. So.
Yeah. There was some chatter I was like looking at on Twitter about buy and hold, and the general consensus that people were like, buy and hold is crazy, right? You're foolish. Like, look at what's happened in the past, couple of years with buy and hold. People have been devastated. You've got to get out before, the party's over, basically. What's your take on buy and hold? Do you have, is it something that you would, of course, none of this is financial advice, but do you think, generally speaking, the strategy is sound or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, buy and hold it's the best way for people who, it's the best. I think it's the best way for people to achieve wealth in the stock market, right? I mean, there are some people that can trade, right? But it's an elite group. You're talking like the top 1% or something. And I know that I'm not in that percent. I'm not a trader, and I see trading as something fundamentally different from investing, although they're kind of tied together somehow. But I think that they're totally different. One is really about understanding short-term events and their impact on the markets and things like that, and interpreting. That's like Emmett Peppers is really good at that. And the other, investing is more about, especially in a tech company, an engineering-driven, hardcore engineering company like Tesla. Investing is much more about understanding the technology and its long-term implications. So understanding, I wrote a paper in 2015 about the convergence of electric vehicles and autonomy, and robotaxis, and I wrote a 30-page document on that, and that would basically gave me a higher level of conviction, where I just wanted to be a long-term buy and hold investor. And I'm doing something similar with TeslaBot right now. I'm researching TeslaBot, and I see the enormous potential of that. So that's giving me more conviction for holding for the next decade. So I'm a long-term thinker. I only look at kind of, engineering companies like Tesla, they invest, and sometimes they don't get a return on that investment for years and years and years. So, I think that short-term mindsets, they never work in the long run. If you're a trader, you might make money for a couple of years, but eventually it catches up to you. And that includes all options trading. I have a lot of friends that got involved with covered calls, and they were doing really, really well. And then they ended up getting shares called away from them, and that was unimaginable to them, right? And it just happens, right? So I think that there's always somebody on the other side of that trade, that, especially when you're engaging in a lot of trading and options, you're up against hedge funds, and you're up against incredibly sophisticated trading algorithms and custom hardware. Some of these hedge funds have custom like hardware, and they're writing programs in C++ to do high-speed trading and things like that, that you just you're disadvantaged, right? Like if you're involved in that kind of stuff, the person on the other side of that trade often is going to be better than you in the long run. Like I knew that the game is rigged, so I just don't do it. I just do
Yeah.
long-term buy and hold. Buy and hold is just the way to go. So I may be down, like, since I retired, I'm down about 2 million, 2.5 million. But since I started investing in Tesla, I'm still way up, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's a long game, right? Like, we're not talking about a scope within 2 or 3 years. I'm talking about within 7 years at least. I think 7 years is like the minimum that somebody should kind of buy and hold, right? Buy and hold doesn't mean buy and hold for a year or two. It means at least 7 years.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's like, I think the reason why I think in some, like, buy and hold, I think it has to be qualified too. If, like, it has to be a good company or something you buy and hold. You don't want to buy and hold a loser company.
Right.
But I think it plays on the aspect of how humans are so fickle, and emotions and sentiment go up and down so much. How people can be on a cloud one day and just completely, like, pessimistic the other day, and it can go in cycles. And so, yeah, it's like it's tough to predict this stuff when sometimes the people with big funds are manipulating the sentiment also,
absolutely.
Right? So yeah, I mean, if you can get into a great investment early and hold on, that's it's tough to do that, I think, in some ways. I want to talk to you about Tesla AI Day. You're saying, like, you got to evaluate, this hardcore technology company with what's going on with their tech. What was kind of your overall impression, takeaway with Tesla AI Day?
I was totally blown away. I did not expect the robot to be walking at that point. And some people expected it. There were a lot of roboticists that expected it and were not impressed. But for me, I was just impressed that they did that within 6 months, right? And they didn't just build a walking robot, they're designing their own actuators. They did a ton of work. They're already working on the next version that is going to blow everyone away. Like, it's just, it's not just about the robot. It's not just about the actuators and mechanics. All that stuff is, sure, it's great. Like, Tesla's done some amazing work with that already, but that's not going to set them, say, several years ahead of the competition, if there is any competition, because people will just be able to reverse engineer a lot of that stuff. Anything that you can see, anything that you can feel, mechanical engineering things, like, they'll be able to copy it in a couple of years. What will set Tesla ahead of everyone else is the AI, right? And this is the first robot that really has a brain, right? First humanoid robot that where there's the potential to have for it to be intelligent, right? It's kind of more like an intelligent machine. It's something that will be able to walk into a room and understand its environment, make sense of it, and take actions based on that. Whereas most robots, humanoid robots today, are kind of gimmicky. Like, they're no offense to a lot of roboticists out there, but they've been trying to do the impossible, right? They don't have the resources that a company like Tesla has right now, and the talent, to be frank, to build something like Dojo so they can train their neural nets for the robots. And that will be essential, because you can't just do training of neural nets on the AWS cloud at the scale that Tesla's going to be. It's going to be incredibly expensive to do that, right? Like, Tesla is thinking so far ahead with this that eventually they'll have an insurmountable lead, I think. And it's just, to me, it wasn't just about the robot. It was about, AI Day was about the AI, especially with FSD. And that is, it's incredibly promising. Like, I'm really excited about it. So one analogy I like to make with what's happened in humanoid robotics in the last couple decades up until this point is kind of like what happened with early flight and around 1900 with the Wright brothers. So before the Wright brothers flew the first powered fixed wing aircraft, there were many failed airplanes, like many failed machines that could never, they were cool. They were able to do some cool things, like fly in the air for a little bit of time, but they weren't actually in sustained flight. They just couldn't crack that. And then once the Wright brothers finally achieved flight, then it was just, there was an explosion of aircraft. And then there were, multiple generations of propulsion. We started with the internal combustion engine, then there was like, jet engines, turboprops, and then the ramjet in the 1960s with the Blackbird. So within a few decades, we went from achieving first flight to flying an aircraft that's literally 100 times heavier, flying at Mach 3.5, right? Like that to me is mind blowing, but it just took that breakthrough of achieving flight. So I think with the humanoid robotics, we've had a lot of kind of gimmicky robots that can do some things, so they can walk around, but they don't really understand their environment. And they don't really have a brain effectively. So the cool thing about the Tesla bot and Optimus is that it could be the first truly kind of intelligent machine that has an AI brain that can walk into your room, understand its environment. You can give it a voice command, and it'll just do what you want. It can actually get to that point. And we're seeing with Tesla FSD that enormous progress with that, and that's I think that we're going to see something similar with a humanoid robot.
Okay, so with the robot, how confident are you that, let's say Tesla in 5 or 6 years can actually deliver a useful robot, that can actually do stuff in my house? Or do you think it's going to take longer? And what do you think about competition? Do you think there is competition, or do you think Tesla's like kind of in a league of its own?
I think that if there is competition, it won't be from any current robotics companies. I think it'll be from a company that already has a leg up on AI, like Meta or Google, or some Chinese companies that maybe I don't know about, or Korean companies. But I think it won't come from robotics. The challenging part won't be the robotics side. It'll be more like, I'm not talking about actuators and all that stuff. That stuff is really important, but it's really about the brain of the robot, and whoever is developing real world AI could become competitive, right? So that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's more about, like, I love the focus on things like the motors that Tesla's designing, the actuators. They're amazing. I was doing research on actuators, and I looked at the force and the kind of dimensions of the actuators that Tesla has been designing, and I was searching for actuators that had similar kind of specifications in terms of force, and they're literally twice as big. Like the actuators that you can buy right now are like they have twice as much mass, or the equivalent actuators of the same mass are like have half of the force that they can handle, right? So it's kind of like they're already making some pretty cool progress on actuators, and that's pretty exciting. But I think the really to get to your question about, like, will there be competition? Yeah, of course. Like, but I think it's really the window of kind of opportunity, the window of time available to competitors is quickly kind of disappearing. If Tesla continues, if Dojo is super successful and they're able to train their neural nets much faster at a much lower price, then good luck to everybody else running on AWS, or like they're going to have to build their own chips, and it's going to be difficult to catch up. Software is very difficult to catch up to you once it starts to really pull ahead, right?
Mm-hmm. It seems like Optimus has been controversial. There's been a lot of people who are like I would say discounting, but making fun of, let's say, what Tesla's doing. On the flip side, there are folks like you and others that are very excited about Optimus and its potential. Like, what's going on here? Like, what are you seeing, or how are you thinking that's making you see something that's almost the opposite of how some other people are looking at Optimus? Are there any kind of thought, like, patterns or things you're focusing on that's maybe different or unique with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to the economics of the robot. It's going to be, I mean, Elon says that they might be able to build this eventually for less than $20,000, and I think they're going to be able to build it for much less than that eventually. I mean, Tesla not too long ago was saying that they would build a $25,000 car, right? And that car has a lot more components, a lot more mass, a lot more material than these 160-pound robots, right? Like just the raw materials of these robots, once they start mass producing these, they'll be able to manufacture them, I think, at quite a bit less than 20,000. especially if they're building their own actuators and they're building all their own components. It'll be vertically integrated. So that's exciting right there. And also when you think about, if this robot can do the equivalent job of somebody right now who's getting paid maybe like a mechanic, right? Who's getting paid $35,000 a year. Then that mechanic is really only working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, so 40 hours. Versus, if you had a robot working 24/7 for 7 days, or close to that, you essentially have, how many hours are there in a week? 160, 170 or something. That would be, you're essentially saying a robot could be equivalent of 4 employees working throughout the week, 24/7. So you can just multiply 4 times 35,000 and get, $140,000 salary for the robot if the opportunity cost is 4 employees. So then you're talking about something with a lifetime of 7 or 8 years, and that's $1 million value right there. So for something that costs less than $20,000 to manufacture, so that's just a basic kind of napkin math example of how valuable this robot can be. So the profitability, there could be extremely high margins on this, 700% margins or more. And then these things will actually get better with time too, because all these robots would be collecting information about the environment. They'll be gathering data just like the Tesla vehicles are now, and they'll be sending that data back to Dojo, neural nets to be trained, and then all the robots will kind of get new updates, and they'll simultaneously be learning that they'll learn kind of simultaneously. And just, you can teach one of these robots how to do a task like pick up a impact wrench and take a wheel off of a car or something, and all the robots will learn that eventually. That net gets trained, and all the other robots receive updates, and now they can all do it. You could have hundreds of thousands or millions of robots learning how to take a wheel off, right? Just because one learned how to do it. So that's pretty cool too. Imagine, you can't do that with people, right? If someone learns how to do that, every person needs to kind of learn it very slowly, right? So the rate of learning will be really high. Also, if they can make robots that are less than $20,000, I think initially they'll use them in the factories. I don't think we'll see them in the home for many years, maybe at least 5 years, but I think they'll start using them in the factories. And then, especially for jobs that are kind of maybe hazardous or don't require a lot of skill, right? They're kind of moving things around the factory, or some very basic work in the factory. And eventually they'll get more and more useful in the Tesla plants, in the factories. And they'll also be collecting data while they do this right now. Right now, you can't really ask a factory worker if, it's hard to gather data on what everything a factory worker is doing, unless you maybe strap a camera on them or, record everything with sensors. Like, it's very ineffective to do that. But with robots, they'll be able to collect data all the time. Whatever they're doing, they're capturing data. Even the rate at which they're applying torque on a wrench, that's recorded too. Like, they'll be able to record every movement the robot makes, and Tesla can use that to further enhance the quality of their products, especially in the manufacturing side. So that's just, there's so many ways you can look at this, and I don't know how anybody can't be excited about just deployment of the robots in the factories alone, right? And then if you want to talk about robots in the home, that's another conversation. That's going to get kind of nutty, right? If they can make this an affordable robot.
I think you bring up an interesting point, this whole idea of these robots, like, the plan is for them not to cost $1 million to make, right, per robot.
Right.
This is actually a very cost efficient, effective, almost a cheap robot in that sense of the materials or what's going into it. So maybe 10, 15,000, we're talking about to make it. But the value that this robot can provide over many years is just mind boggling. And you've got to think that if Tesla can do it, they'll be able to capture some of that value, a good portion of it, especially if they're ahead of the competition, like let's say they're
Right.
way ahead. What do you think? Do you think they'll do a subscription model eventually, or will they let people just buy it out straight out, or what's your thought? Thought process on this?
I think eventually, I don't know when this will happen, but if these do end up in people's homes, a subscription model I think would be the way to go, especially like an app store type situation where maybe somebody buys a robot and it comes with a default, some default functionality, like it can move things for you, right? Like there'll be some default functionality that the robot can do. It'll be able to talk and converse with you and walk around, pick up stuff, and open the door, close the door, greet people. But I think if you wanted to do other things, like say, be able to pull weeds in your yard or something, there could be some garden bot functionality in the app store where you can have a subscription model, and as long as you pay that monthly amount, the robot can walk around your yard and inspect things, and it can wash your solar panels or something like that. I think it makes sense to do a subscription type model, or maybe you can have a robot that's capable of cooking, that can cook for you and has the ability to cook certain types of foods, or you could pay for that functionality, right? Like a chef bot subscription, and this sounds all really futuristic and science fiction, but I mean, we're talking about picking up some ingredients, opening a door, grabbing something, turning on the stove, just basic hand movements, and recognizing, things in the fridge. It's just like machine vision. Like they can do this, like this will happen. But yeah, I think the business model won't just be you buy a robot and, it comes with all the functionality kind of out of the box. And the robot could probably take itself out of the box when it's shipped to you. Like that's kind of cool. It's a robot like open. I don't know. It's just kind of exciting. The robot will be able to charge itself. It could walk up to a charger, plug itself in. It'll be able to kind of maybe fix itself, tighten its screws, whatever, repair itself a little bit, and do diagnostics on itself and show you, or at least tell you what its status is. Yeah.
I think what's interesting also with the whole AI and the brain of the robot is typically with AI, like things are improving or getting better exponentially, and it's happening really fast. The capabilities of these brains, like just like it feels like it was yesterday when AI beat chess, but now it's like doing all this. Any game is basically like child's play right now.
Right.
And it seems like with the Optimus robot, if AI progresses in a similar trajectory, it's possible like the early years, we're not seeing the improvements or the usefulness as maybe we would hope for, in the sense of like wanting it now. But there's a certain time where the improvements just go like crazy. I mean, the brain just gets so smart and so fast. It can do almost anything. It's like, I don't know if people are, I mean, that's
they're
what
not
I'm
ready.
They're
not ready. Like nobody knows.
That's what I'm seeing. Like if you look at technology and AI, that's what's going to happen. It feels like, but no one's ready for that at all. It just feels like
no one's ready. It's going to be crazy. Like it's going to be nuts. Like, I mean, if you think about it from a first principles way, I mean, a robot that can cook, not only cook, but order the ingredients for you, right? Because it's going to be networked, right? Just like not only order the ingredients for you, it'll open the door when the grocery delivery person comes to the door, and it'll put those things away from you, right? It'll put those groceries away. It'll know where to put them away in your kitchen because you've trained it. When you bought the robot,
or the bot who delivers the food, right?
The bot will deliver. Maybe they'll have a little robot conversation for and then the robot knows your kitchen and knows where to put everything because you kind of showed it when you bought the robot. When you unpackaged it, you showed it your house, and it kind of observed things, and it knows where everything is. It can open the door, grab the groceries from the other Tesla bot, put them into your kitchen, and then it knows when to cook dinner, right? It'll cook in, maybe at 7 o'clock, it'll start, mixing things and, cook for you. And I mean, how much does a personal chef cost right now? Like it's expensive, right? I've looked into it, you know, it's not even, it's too expensive for me, right? Like, I mean, I kind of, I mean, you know, that would be dope, right? To have a robot that could just cook for you, right? And then at nighttime, when there's no need to cook, you know, you could be sleeping. The robot can just clean your house quietly when you're asleep. And then, or maybe just, you know, be kind of a security bot for you in your backyard or something. So the roles that it will have will change throughout the day, right? And it's, you know, this can happen, right? There's nothing impossible about what I'm saying. Like it will happen, right? We just don't know when. But I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see some of this functionality being delivered, right?
So yeah, one idea that I thought was interesting that you brought up was this whole idea of a mechanic, but a robot could do basically 3x the amount because it doesn't sleep, right? It doesn't get tired.
Right.
And I mean, mechanics, I mean, actually their job, that's a tough one. I think that's like some of these skilled jobs are really tough. I think what's really interesting is also because of the 3x amount of work a bot can do, they could do things that aren't economically kind of viable jobs right now because they don't meet this criteria where, you know, it could produce a product or service that can justify a human's salary right now, right?
Yeah,
but if you did a 24-hour thing and it was super low cost, because, you know, let's say the bot is only costing, I don't know, a very cheap amount per year to operate, then there's a whole host of different of viable like jobs, you know, you could do or work. Like, for example, you can have your bot do make a crazy backyard garden, like do like 10 levels and have a whole farm back there that wouldn't normally be economically viable for a person to spend that much time on, because you're not getting that much, let's say, value or you know, food from it. But if a bot does it 24/7, it doesn't have to get $10 an hour of value, right? It could be less, a lot less than that.
Right.
And I think there's a ton of different possibilities that open up, especially when you, this whole 24-hour idea. And if the bot is only costing $10,000 or $15,000 to make and can last 8 or even 10 years or something, like, it's mind-boggling, like, you know, this stuff, I think. Yeah.
I mean, if somebody is willing to pay someone $35,000 to do, that's like, or something minimum wage. I don't know if that's 35,000, but some minimum wage job. That's the minimum you would pay someone. If a robot is going to be essentially 4 times more productive because it's 24/7, and you know, and it's only going to cost $20,000, you know, you can effectively pay it a fraction of minimum wage. You know, if you want to think about it that way. And so, yeah, a robot would be able to do things that right now just economically don't make sense for humans to do. Like, you know, a really simple one is just picking up trash in some fixed defined space, right? Like, you know, or sweeping curbs, or observing things, walking around observing, maybe kind of security bots or something where it doesn't make sense to do security in some area. You know, like there's lots of jobs that I can do that currently aren't jobs, right? Because they wouldn't pay enough, right? Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. And also the hazardous jobs too. There's a lot of hazardous jobs, I think, and tasks that I can do, like the Fukushima nuclear disasters, right? Having something I can go in and turn valves and things like that is, you know, that would be really useful.
Yeah. The other day I was like laying in bed and it was like midnight, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, man, like, I can't stop thinking about this Optimus robot and the future, because it really is mind-blowing. And it feels like, you know, back in the day when I first got into Tesla, you know, like maybe over 10 years ago, and was researching it and saw the potential of, let's say, the EV revolution and everything switching over into electric cars, et cetera.
Yeah.
Like that was big and that was exciting. But the potential of a humanoid AI robot just seems like a completely on a different level.
Right.
It just, it's sobering. And then I think one of the distinct or defining factors of whether or not you see it or not is your view on AI and neural nets and how fast and where it progresses to, because if you see it as this like crazy thing that's just in its infancy and it's just going to go past human intelligence or whatever, then you can track that and follow that. But if you think that no, like, all this AI stuff has been talked about for decades, but hasn't led anywhere yet, and it's all hype and we're not getting much applications out of it right now, then you're going to have a different view, right? I think on the AI robot. But curious, what's behind your view on AI and the future of it that maybe helps you to interpret, the Optimus robot in a certain way?
Well, the AI field is moving so fast that even the top researchers in the field are kind of like frustrated by how like they can't keep up with all the innovation and all the new literature and papers that are coming out. People just can't, like, I think we're getting to the point where people need to specialize within that field because nobody can keep up. It's just moving so quickly. So many advancements are being made. So many papers are being written that, like, on Twitter, I've been kind of watching this. There's a lot of people that are like, I just can't keep up. Like, these are like some of the most like world-renowned like AI researchers, and they just cannot, like, there's just too much going on. So I don't see it waning at all. I don't see AI as slowing down. I see it's just speeding up faster than people kind of expected. I mean, look at like every month there's some new tool that comes out. Like Meta, Facebook's Meta, just like they basically came out with a tool where you could write one sentence and it'll generate a footage, like it'll generate a video based on what you describe. Like unicorns, you could type unicorns running on the beach, like just type that phrase and it'll generate a video of unicorns running on the beach, right? Or you could say, there's one example where it says a bear painting another bear, like, and then a video clip of a teddy bear drawing like actually like an oil painting of another teddy bear is generated. Like, that's ridiculous. Like there's just so many amazing things that are being created. You could never write this stuff by hand. This is a new programming paradigm. All of this is data driven. Nobody's writing this code. Like this is literally programs that are learning from data, and there's an infinite amount of data out there. So these things have infinite capacity for learning, which is kind of that's nuts. Like it's going to accelerate much more rapidly, and there could be some limitation in the short term, like maybe the hardware can't keep up, or we can't train these. We don't have like I'm not an expert in this field. Like I'm not. But I'm just seeing this, and it's like I don't see it slowing down. I don't see this field slowing down. No, there have been kind of AI winters in the past where there'd be a lot of innovation and then things would kind of die off or slow down, and there wouldn't be much research. But yeah, I think that changed with the neural nets coming back in the early 2000s. I was at Google at the time. No, not early 2000s. I think around 2010. I think when they acquired AlphaGo, they people would joke about neural nets at Google, right? There was a joke, like people thought it was like a gimmick thing from the 90s. And I remember the memes that were generated internally. There was a lot of jokes about neural nets. It's not a joke anymore, right? It's definitely, it's come a long way.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so moving on to Twitter. Do you think, what are your thoughts on Elon acquiring Twitter? It seems like it's been a rough journey to get to a place where he can actually take it. But are you optimistic on what he could do? Regarding Twitter?
Freedom of speech is important. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing. I think it's not the best thing for Tesla shareholders in the short term, but I think in the long term, it's good for everybody because, I think that it's just not cool to cancel people just because they speak up, and if they have good intentions, I think that we really need to protect freedom of speech, and I think it's great. Like I've actually been fully supportive of Elon buying Twitter, and I'm glad that he was able to buy it.
I hope it closes soon. It seems like we'll see.
And I just want to get it done with, like, just move on.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I just hope that people don't blame him when somebody posts something on Twitter and they're not, like somebody will eventually post something that's that will piss a lot of people off, and they'll accuse Elon of somehow siding with this person because he's not kicking them off the platform. I'm not looking forward to that aspect of it.
Yeah.
People will blame Elon for a lot of things on Twitter, and I'm not excited about that part, right? But I do like the idea of them like open sourcing their terms of service and their policies so that people can see, what their policies are, and because right now there's a lot of weird stuff going on with Twitter. There's shadow banning, and there's a lot of secrecy about how they decide to remove certain people and not others. And it's confusing, right? So I think Elon will shine some light on that and maybe make it a little bit more explicit and open. Yeah. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And last question topic is macro. Lots of talk about inflation, possible recession, rates raising. People are kind of spooked out. Any thoughts on kind of when this craziness ends? What's your kind of outlook or thoughts?
Oh gosh, I wish I knew. I mean, I think it's going to be at least another 6 months to a year. I think that the Fed is, I don't know when they're going to slow down or stop raising rates. That could be a while. And then Ukraine, I hope we can resolve that. That to me, I think is even more important because that can spiral out of control very quickly. And I think that, but what's also worries me is like, housing is not affordable for most people anymore. It's just very difficult to get a mortgage, right? If you want to get a mortgage, it's at least 7%, and we're talking about 12% interest rates on mortgages right now, which is insane, right? That's not. A lot of people are getting priced out of homes and they can't borrow right now. So that worries me. I just think the Fed should just chill. The Fed should be less aggressive. Like prices will come down eventually. But I don't know. There was a CPI report that came out. Was it today? And it's higher than expected numbers. So I don't know. I don't know what part of it is demand side or supply side. There's supply side disruption with both COVID and now with Ukraine. And so that's increasing prices of everything with sanctions and stuff like that. And then also the demand side is like, there's a lot of spending. There was a lot of COVID kind of relief and stimulus spending that happened. So that drove up demand. So now there's a lot of money in circulation and too much money chasing too few goods, right? So we have both of those things happening simultaneously, and that's why prices have gone up so much. Combined with the Fed rising rates, it's kind of a really terrible situation, right? Like those three things, like COVID relief and supply chain issues, and now rising interest rates making it difficult for people to borrow. So maybe at least another 6 months. I don't know. I wish I knew.
Yeah, definitely. Fun stuff to chat about. I'll go ahead. Any other kind of closing thoughts, comments, topics, or just things on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, what did you think of, what was your first impressions on AI Day? I mean, what do you think about, what's your take on Optimus and kind of more immediate term, midterm, long term? What are you looking forward to? Do you have any concerns?
So I have this pinned tweet on my Twitter account. It's basically, we're right at this turning point.
I saw it.
Of history where, AI robots are going to be able to basically do almost everything that humans do, but better.
Right.
And I think this is a huge paradigm shift because up until this point, humans have been on top. That's our entire worldview of the universe is like, we do everything. And I think there's something anti-human about what's happening in a sense, right? And I still think humans can retain some type of spiritual edge, some type of unique element of consciousness. Others might disagree, but I think on a purely physical level and mental level, like intelligence, like it's going to be no competition. I mean, these robots are, what we've unleashed with AI and neural nets is insane. You know, it's basically unleashing the power of the brain, you know, how the brain works, but in a synthetic form.
Right.
And this is crazy. I think this is probably the biggest shift in history. It's going to be probably one of the quickest. The most impact is going to touch every single aspect of our lives, societies, everything. Nothing's going to be untouched. And it's going to come fast. And it's kind of concerning because people aren't expecting it. You know, they think it's 20, 30 years down the road.
No, it's not.
And I think the thing that about AI Day was I was basically, okay, how far is Tesla on this, and how serious are they with Optimus and, you know, their AI ambitions? We knew that, you know, they're really focused on it with FSD, but I think AI Day kind of was this, I want to say this crowning moment, but this really a highlight where they're like, you guys thought we were serious about this, but no, we really are serious. You know, we really, we see the future. It's just right in front of us, and this is how we're doing it. You know, we're building the hardware, we're building the software, and you know, we're even building the infrastructure, you know, the compute, everything. And it's insane. Like, it really was this kind of stamp, this confirmation, this extra oomph where they're like,
Did you see how focused and confident the Tesla team was? The entire team, everybody that presented, they didn't care. Like, they didn't care how they were received. That was my impression, because they know they're onto some real, like, engineering. Like, they didn't care about demo fail. Like the team that the robotics team, when they unveiled the robot, I didn't get a sense that anyone was nervous. That's a really good sign. Usually, I think when somebody demos something and there's like a lot of, you can feel it, like demo pain. You can feel people when they're afraid to demo or they're nervous, because and if they're confident, even if the robot fell on its face, I got a feeling that team would still have been cool with it, because they're like, I mean, it would have sucked, but I get a feeling that they know that they're onto something big, right? And that's exciting. And they weren't, you know, I've worked in tech for many years, and I noticed that this pattern between teams that are really prepared, like really kind of nervous about demos and spent even more time preparing for demos than actual engineering work, that's a huge red flag, right? But the people that are, you know, demos like, oh, but prepare it an hour before, whatever, those are the teams that usually succeed, because they know, they're confident in what they're doing, right? And they're so focused on it that they really think of a demo or something like that as kind of like almost like a nuisance, you know, like that's where you want to be. So the team is very confident and focused, and I just see, like, you know, keep an eye on these people, right? These young people, like these incredible engineers, like they're going places. Like, these people are going to be very famous, right? Like, you know, someday, whether they stay at Tesla forever, which would be dope, but eventually they're, you know, they'll be like Andre, you know, after 5 years, they might decide to move on. These are like the people that left that are like, you know, that start big companies, and I don't want them to do that, but like, I think it's like, keep an eye on these young, brilliant engineers. I think it's really exciting. And I just love their focus and confidence during the presentation. That's something I was watching, right? I was watching that. I was like, because you have to read between the lines during these things. You have to see what's the overall vibe? What's the feel? Like, how do these people feel, right? Most people don't look at that. They just look at the robot and the mechanics and judge it to Boston Dynamics. That's the last thing I was doing. I didn't care. Like, it's like that's something I don't really, is not important to me. To me, it's about what I think is going on in their heads, and how you know, everybody on that stage was just like, that was really impressive, right? Clearly everyone's very passionate, and so they're doing their best work.
It also is interesting how the whole team seems like very in tune with, they know all of their work with FSD is going to be really, you know, applied to Optimus, and they understand this is big. Like, they're working on some really crazy stuff.
They've been working on Optimus since 2008, really, or whenever they started working on autopilot, FSD.
Yeah.
This is years and years in the making, really, because, you know, it's all about the robot brain. It's all about the neural nets and FSD. So, and they just whipped up that robot in 6 months. Now it's just the first version. The next version will be, it's going to be dope. Can't wait.
Yeah. I think was it 2018 or 2019? They had Autonomy Day.
Oh, sorry, not 2018.
2018. Yeah. But a few years before that, I'm sure they were doing autopilot. I was talking to one of the engineers at the event, and I was like, he was describing occupancy network a bit more, and I'm like, and just the significance of how much that's helping. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, when did you guys start on this? Like, when did you guys switch over to all this? And he's like,
it's pretty genius.
It's been about 1 year. And so in a span of 1 year, they basically just completely revamped, right?
Just ripping everything out. Exactly. I can see the engineers at Waymo engineers probably are just like afraid to touch the core code base, but like with FSD team, they're just ripping things out and, you know, oh, we're going to use voxels here. And now we don't care what the thing is. We just need to know that it's there and we can't move it there. You know, that's the occupancy network. It's like they have, it's a new paradigm. Before they were trying to recognize probably every single object and label it and identify it and then figure out what to do about it. But now they're just like, that space is occupied, don't go in there, right? Like that's like, there's little voxels everywhere, and that's the way to go. It's just computationally less intense, and like, and you know, I think that was like, I was really happy to see that occupancy network.
Some crazy stuff gonna happen over the next few years, I think.
I know, right? It's gonna be nutty. It's gonna be nuts.
Definitely. But cool. I mean, back to what we were talking about in the beginning, it's like my latest thoughts on kind of the market is, does it really matter, like Tesla stock price, you know, this year, next month, next week, you know, last week? I mean, if you're a long-term holder, and if you own a certain portion of the company, and you understand the significance of what Tesla is really doing with the brain, it really, at least for me, it really doesn't matter like the short-term moves. It's like irrelevant in a lot of ways.
You don't want to be out of the stock. You don't want to be timing things and not holding the stock for even a day. Like, you really have to be holding onto the stock all the time. Like, if you're trading Tesla stock and you think it's one of the best stocks to trade, I mean, that's great for now. But when it breaks out again, and it will break out again, you're going to be regretting your entire life. Like, why were you holding Tesla stock at that time? If you're somebody who's in and out of the stock, you're risking so much upside. It just doesn't make any sense to trade Tesla or to not own Tesla. It's ridiculous. I think it's like, I mean, they're killing it in all the important areas. Manufacturing, you know, like they're just incredibly innovative with manufacturing, to the point where you know, they're using gigapresses and stuff. Like, it's just, that to me is insane. And then AI, we just talked about that. Power electronics, they're some of the best in the world at power electronics, low voltage electronics, high voltage, and then they you know, mechanical engineering, actuators, power, cooling. They're the perfect company to build a humanoid robot. Really, I don't think anybody else is set up to do this at the level Tesla will do it. Right? Like Facebook, Meta, Google, they might be able to build the brain, but they won't be able to mass produce the robots. Like, they won't. Good luck building actuators like that are specific for particular joints or sets of joints. Right? Like what Tesla's doing. You know, I think Tesla's perfectly positioned for this, and it's super exciting. Right? I feel the same way about this that I did about FSD in 2015, or autonomy and the convergence of autonomy in electric cars. So, super exciting.
Yeah, awesome, Jason. Nice catching up. I'll go ahead and link to your Twitter profile in the video description. Cool. And fun chatting. And thanks for all who have joined in. All right, we'll see you guys. Bye.
Thanks, Dave.